Hey everybody, it's Kaladesh and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing one last premiere draft of Kaladesh Remastered, as the Rivals of Ixalan is going to come back tomorrow, swap it out for the flashback format. So without further ado, let's get into our pack 1, pick 1 here. I'm going to start off with an Aether Hub here, which is going to be a great card for any energy deck, but it's also going to be fine mana fixing for anything for splashing in some random off-color spell. We could also go with Oath of Ajani, which is probably the strongest card in the pack, but it's also the most restrictive by a lot, requiring green and white mana, being a multicolored spell here. But it is going to buff your entire board with a +1/+1 counter, which is pretty decent for only 2 mana. There's nothing else super exciting in the pack, honestly. I think it's really just between those two, the Aether Hub and the Oath of Ajani. I'm going to start a lot more open with the Aether Hub. For pick number 2, we've got excellent removal out of black with Essence Extraction. It's a little hard to cast, requiring double black, so definitely not very splashable at all, but pretty serviceable removal there. There's also a Self-Assembler here, which can fit into any deck as excellent top end. Starts this really good card advantage chain where the first one picks up the second one, which could pick up the third or even the fourth if you manage to get a ton of copies. So 5 mana 4/4 that draws you another guaranteed creature to cast is a pretty good deal already, so even just 2 copies makes the Self-Assembler great. Could also take Prophetic Prism. I think Self-Assembler and Prophetic Prism are some of the best options just because they're wide open. They're going to fit into basically any deck in the format, help out no matter what direction we end up going. But if we're taking just for raw power alone, we take the Essence Extraction. I think I'm just going to continue staying open here, take my favorite of the colorless spells, which you probably know by now is the Self-Assembler. Huge fan of that in everything I play. Speaking of cards that I'm a huge fan of in anything I play, there's a Sky Skiff here, which works excellently in almost any deck. Basically every color in this format can produce servos somehow, which are these little 1/1 tokens that don't end up being super useful by themselves, but you give them some vehicles to crew that are crew 1, and they become really, really nice throughout the game. The other way to use servos is, of course, like double blocking up with them or buffing them with some other way, but one of my favorite ways is to get these crew 1 vehicles, and all of a sudden your little 1/1 servo lets you attack in with your Sky Skiff every turn, get 2 evasive damage in. So we'll take the Sky Skiff here. I think it's the best colorless spell in the pack. There are solid, powerful colored spells like Aether Poisoner and Wisp Weaver Angel, but I'm just going to keep it nice and open here. Just bouncing around with all the colorless spells. Every single pick we've taken so far is going to make our deck no matter what. Now that we're also taking Pacification Array, the poor man's Icy Manipulator, where it costs 2 mana every turn to tap an artifact or creature, but it's still excellent interaction. It's like pseudo removal, where you're keeping your opponent's biggest threat locked down throughout the game. Still an absolutely phenomenal card, even if it's a little more expensive than just 1 mana per turn, like the original Icy Manipulator was. And yeah, again, keeps us completely colorless, which is fantastic. Pick number 5. My favorite of these spells is Aether Poisoner yet again. So we might actually hop into black now, because I don't think any of these colorless spells are great. The Solvent just costs so much mana to use as removal. The Construct and the Mastodon are massively filler. I don't love these uncommons, or any of the other commons really. Yeah, best cards are Aether Poisoner and Shipwreck Moray, and I think the Shipwreck Moray is more narrow than the Aether Poisoner. I mean, it does function perfectly fine all by itself, but it is really, really for the energy decks, whereas the Aether Poisoner is just great for any black deck, period. Warrior Poisoner. I guess I would rather end up in blue, and I already have the Aether Hub towards energy. I'm actually going to take the Moray over the Poisoner there. We'll see how it pans out for us. I think Moray's the slightly weaker card, but blue is generally a much stronger color. So we'll see. Pick number 6. Once again, nothing great out of the colorless spells. Could take a Dragster, but it always trades off immediately because of that 1 toughness that it has. Still fun if you want to just jam in really big one time. High Spire Infusion's a really good combat trick for an energy deck, because you get to use your combat trick to win the fight and also get some later value out of it with those energy counters. Wheelsmith would be fine as well. This is a decent sign nobody's going specifically red-white. I guess because we have so many colorless spells, we can speculate pretty wild and go for a gold card here like the Wheelsmith over the energy combat trick. Although it looks like that energy combat trick would have went great for us because the best card in this pack is easily Thriving Rhino, immediately attacking as a 3/4 the first time it sends in, and with any other energy, it just keeps snowballing up, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Pick number 8, nothing super playable here. Tezzeret's Ambition's a little slow, but it's fine. 5 mana, draw 3 if you have a good artifact count, and I think we're going to have a pretty good artifact count. So we'll take the Ambition. Pick number 9, Lifecraft Cavalry, fine top end filler. I think we are more likely in green-blue energy than anything else right now, but we have enough colorless spells that we can still be open if we open up something really good in pack number 2 that puts us down a completely different direction. But we're getting super solid cards for green-blue energy super late here. So I feel like that archetype is decently open here. Not wide open, we're not getting insane cards super late, but that was relatively late for Thriving Rhino, and that just there was relatively late for Thriving Turtle. So we're seeing decent signs that we will get more than enough playables in this color pair if we do go in this direction. So we'll take something really strong to buck me off this trend here. But it could definitely happen. We've got colorless spells, for sure, to fill out a deck no matter what we move around to. Alright, looks like no moving here, because our pack 2 pick 1 is a Rishkar Pima Renegade. 3 mana for a 2/2, but it puts a +1/+1 counter on up to 2 creatures when it enters the battlefield. So it's a 3 mana 3/3, because you can always put the counter on itself, but it also puts a counter on an additional creature you control, and it makes it so Rishkar and whatever you put the counter on can tap for a mana and ramp you up. Really, really easy to hit a 5 or a 6 drop the turn after you cast this. Plus, it's just beef. It's plenty of power and toughness for the mana cost. Great spell here. Slightly sad to see the Self-Assembler in the exact same pack as it. Would have been really happy to see a pick 2 Self-Assembler, but this Rishkar is just so strong, I've got to take it over the Assembler. I would take the Assembler over everything else in this pack. Next best card is probably Armorcraft Judge if we do go for a +1/+1 counter theme alongside Rishkar, or the Riparian Tiger for a good energy finisher. Pack 2, pick 2. No Self-Assembler in this pack. There's another Sky Skiff, which is fine. I think our deck doesn't look so far like it's going to be a super good Sky Skiff deck, just an average one, so I don't think I'd take it this highly when I already know my 2 colors. I think I'd rather just take the Glimmer of Genius here. Excellent card draw that slaps out some energy at the same time. So, yeah, that's just a really good card. You can dig far with this. Scry 2, draw 2. It's also instant speed, so we can hold up Pacification Array and then, like, use this if we don't need to do that. Just any instant speed abilities it works pretty well with. Yeah, and I have almost all creatures right now. Just 2 non-creature spells with Pacification Array and Ambition. So let's grab a Glimmer here. I think that's very reasonable. Alright, pack 2, pick 3, Attune with Aether is fine. We can run this over our 17th land if we end up playing enough green, and this will be really good if we try to splash in a 3rd color, which we now have an Aether Hub and an Attune with Aether to try to do. So that seems good to me. We could also take Windkin Raiders. Fine finisher, just a gigantic flyer, and if you have a few artifacts on board, you can cast it a little bit cheaper. I think I like going with the Attune with Aether here. See if we can do some splashy stuff if we find anything super powerful. Alright, pack 2, pick 4. So the Aether Seer, it's 4 mana, you get 3 energy minimum. You can force blocks, that seems decent. Blossoming Defense is a really good trick because you can counter a removal spell with it, or you can do the normal combat trick thing of winning a fight, and you do it for only 1 mana. I think Blossoming Defense is so efficient, we actually take it over the Aether Seer or the Aether Thief, both of which are great energy uncommons. Yeah, I'm just going to go for that raw efficiency. I'm going to take the Blossoming Defense there. Pick number 5. Aether Theorist looks pretty reasonable. Get 3 energy when it hits the board. We can do some scrying and setting up our draws. We could also take Wild Wanderer or Unbridled Growth if we want more ways to fix our mana. But I don't think I'm going to take more until I actually have something I'm trying to splash in. Let's take an Aether Theorist here. Pick number 6. Well, now we can try out that Pima Aether Seer. This pack doesn't have much competition, just the beefy cavalry at the top end. Alright, another Aether Seer versus another 1-mana combat trick or a 2-mana creature with the Seed Sculptor. Let's see, what do we need here? I kind of like the idea of picking up another Seed Sculptor. These are great ways to crew the Sky Skiff, as is the Aether Theorist. Plus, it's more +1/+1 counter synergies to go with Rishkar and the Thriving Rhino, and if we wheel that Armorcraft Judge, these Seed Sculptors might actually be really good. And now we take the Energy Combat trick or the Aether Trade Winds. This is a fun one. You bounce your opponent's biggest creature or one of their tokens, and you bounce one of your creatures that has a good enter the battlefield effect. So in an energy deck, you like pick up something to recast to get the energy back. So that's a fun one. I do really like the Energy Combat trick though, so we'll take the High Spire Infusion, and there we go. We did wheel the Armorcraft Judge. So we have Thriving Turtle, Double Seed Sculptor, Thriving Rhino, Rishkar. We've got 5, 6 creatures, Lifecraft Cavalry as well. 6 creatures that could have a counter on themselves to draw a card off the Armorcraft Judge. I think that's pretty reasonable. Another Lifecraft Cavalry if we don't get a second Self-Assembler. We'll need some other 5 drops, and the Lifecraft Cavalries will fill that role for us. Hold down the Alt key, see how much I own all this, and it's full in the collection, so we just draft whatever. Implement of Examination is playable card draw. I think Glimmer and Ambition are probably both better for this deck. So I'm going to put it in the sideboard. But it's not horrible. We do get one of these Wild Wanderers if we do find a splash. That'll help with that. See what we get. Pack 3, pick number 1. Well, we got a splash. Quicksmith Rebel. You have to have an artifact on the board. So we need to draft some more artifacts. We started drafting a bunch of artifacts. We got like 4 colorless spells in a row, but then every pick from then on basically was a colored spell, so that's going to be awkward. We need to pick up more artifacts for this Quicksmith Rebel, but the card is really good and absolutely worth a splash, turning one of your artifacts into a machine gun little turret that clears out 2 toughness creatures every turn, or slowly but surely whittles down your opponent's life total. Quicksmith Rebel's fantastic. If it weren't in the pack, it'd be a pretty easy Aether Swooper, followed by Thriving Turtle, followed by Aether Hub probably, but we have found our splash, and it is Quicksmith Rebel. So we're going to put the Implement in over Tezzeret's Ambition, play the Artifact card draw spell, so I have another artifact maybe on board for the Rebel. Pack 3, pick 2, we've got Wildest Dreams, which is very, very slow, but it's massive. If you can cast this to pick up 3 or more cards, basically just win the game from there. If you're not under pressure, so it's like 7 mana plus. 7 mana plus is a lot of mana, and Pima Outrider is really good for that mana cost. It's great beef. It's got +1/+1 counter synergies for the Armorcraft Judge if we go down that way. I feel like I can get enough solid card advantage and value without the Wildest Dreams. We've got 1 really good card draw spell and another solid one, even without Wildest Dreams, so I think I'm going to take more creatures and make sure that we're doing great on board. Now, a Servant of the Conduit hits our energy themes really well while also fixing for red, so this is better than the Prophetic Prism. Prophetic Prism is definitely in contention here. Like, I think I'd take it over the Thriving Rhino because this is fixing our mana for our splash, and it's another artifact in our deck for the Quicksmith Rebel to have enough artifacts. But I think hitting energy synergies and fixing is just a little bit better than being an artifact and fixing us. So I'm going to take the Servant of the Conduit. Okay. There's no good artifacts here, but there's another Fabricate card, which can give us a Servo token, or an Unbridled Growth, which can give us a red source. We could take Barricade Breaker, but that's just terrible with Quicksmith Rebel. wait till we have a 7-drop artifact down to turn it into something that taps for 2 damage. It's not where it's at. Take a Peem Outrider, get another potential 1/1 servo producer. Turn that servo token into a machine gun. Another Wild Wanderer for fixing, but I have so many 4-drops. I really don't want more. I think I've got enough fixing that we can just play like one mountain here and be happy. So probably take another Implement of Examination because it's much, much more playable without the Quicksmith Rebel than the Ornithopter is, where the Ornithopter really doesn't do anything unless we've top-decked the Quicksmith Rebel. So up that artifact count for Rebel if we can. And, ooh. Actually, hold on. I was going to say, this green-blue fixing looks really good. But there's also Trophy Mage, which pulls out an Implement of Examination when it enters the battlefield no matter what. So it's like another piece of card draw. Yeah, this actually gives us more ways to use our Implement of Examination where they're hitting multiple levels of synergy. That's really nice, where if I have the Quicksmith Rebel in hand, then I know not to crack the Implement. But also if I have a Trophy Mage, then a Trophy Mage is a 2/2 that draws me an Implement of Examination every time. It's actually kind of sweet. Now we've got Unbridled Growth. I'm not going to play Woodweaver's Puzzle, not just for Quicksmith Rebel, because it's not good without the Rebel in hand. Take another Wild Wanderer. Oh my god, last possible chance to get the second Self-Assembler, and we got it. I am taking it over Peem Outrider, which is another servo producer, which is a little sad, but yeah, you gotta get the second copy of Self-Assembler. Let's grab it. Pick 9 Aether Swoopers, an incredible addition to this deck. It's another energy synergy card, and it provides us with a servo token that we can use with our Quicksmith Rebel, which is so big. That was a really lucky wheel. Now we've got another Armorcraft Judge. I don't know if we're going to end up with enough +1/+1 counter synergies to try to run double Armorcraft Judge when I have this many other 4-mana cards. But it's certainly more likely to make the cut than anything else in this pack. Pack 3, pick 11, another Wild Wanderer. If we're really defensive, we could take a Select for Inspection. I kind of, you know what, I'm going to take Select for Inspection, because the other thing I liked about this card was the ability to maybe, like, pick up your Quicksmith Rebel if you, like, crew a Skyskiff with it to protect it from removal. That's probably not worth it in this deck, because I only have one vehicle. But if you've got a good amount of vehicles, you can use Select for Inspection to protect one of your own creatures pretty consistently. Alright, this is going to be a fun one to build. Just a really solid green-blue energy deck at the baseline with a nice little Quicksmith Rebel splash. A couple pretty fun artifact synergies. The Trophy Mage to pull out the Implement of Examinations, the Quicksmith Rebel to use all of our servo tokens and our random artifacts. Still a bit lower on artifacts than I would generally want for the Quicksmith Rebel, but the card's so good I'm still going to go for it. Because we still have probably like 7 or 8 artifacts we can get on board. Because if we count servo, we've got 1 Aether Swooper for servos. Gotta say Fabricate specifically. 2 Peem Outriders. So that's 3 ways to get a 1/1 servo. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 9 ways to have an artifact on board for the Quicksmith Rebel. 6 artifacts and 3 servo producers. So we don't cut any of those. We don't cut any artifacts. We don't cut any servo producers. Seems solid enough. 9 ways to get that Quicksmith Rebel going. It is such a powerful payoff if you do have the artifact to get going. I am going to go for the splash. So we've got 22 creatures and 9 non-creatures. We've got an Attune with Aether, and we're deep enough into green that we make sure that we have like 9 green sources in this deck. So like 8 forests and an Aether hub, even if I cut down on lands. And I think we cut a land for an Attune with Aether and treat this as land 17, basically like an Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse, where we play our forest, we tap our forest to get whatever land we need. So it's like playing an Evolving Wilds turn 1 instead of a forest, basically. So I'm just going to cut a mountain immediately, and we'll go 16 lands, 1 red source, 1 Aether hub, 1 attune with Aether. That's 3 ways to get a red mana out of just the land base, and we also have the Servant of the Conduit. We also maybe have the double Wild Wanderer, but we might not need them. So those could be cuts, because I've got 4 potential ways to get a red mana without the Wild Wanderers. So I don't think they're necessary. They still do make it more consistent. They're still, like, helpful. But I have so much at 4 mana, I'm going to have to drop something out here. Yeah, 7 cards to cut here on 22 creatures in a vehicle. We're definitely cutting mostly creatures, and it feels like mostly 4 drops. I have to do some counting and see how consistent the Armorcraft judges are. I feel like our energy cards are all good enough without the Aether Seer. And this isn't the strongest if you're just using its energy on its own effect. There's that one-time deal. It's probably our weakest, like, energy 4-drop. I think the Moray is better. And the Outriders are really good at hitting multiple synergies. We can get the +1/+1 counters on them if we need, or the servos if we need. And again, I already said I can't really cut any servo producers or artifact cards from this deck for that Quicksmith Rebel. And maybe we don't need that much top end. We could cut a Lifecraft Cavalry, treat these as the 5-drop finishers, these 3. Could definitely cut 1 Lifecraft Cavalry. I don't know if I want to cut both here. But these are the potential cuts out of the creatures. For the non-creatures, we still want like 6 or 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright, select for inspection is the weakest one. Because it's pretty narrow. It's just going to slow our opponents down when they're beating us down. Our deck only has the 1 vehicle to tap our own creature. I guess our pacification array could tap our own creature as well, so there are some narrow positions where we can use this to protect our own creature from removal. Even if it's an untapped creature, we try to tap it to a Skyskiff or pacification array or something, but not as consistent as the last time we were using it. And it's still the least consistent and the most narrow of our non-creature spells here. Like, we'll just use Blossoming Defense instead of Select for Inspection for protecting our creatures. That's a much less narrow way of saving our creatures from removal spell. It just straight up gives them hexproof. They stay on the board, they stick around. So we'll drop the Select, drop 6 more cards still. How many +1/+1 counters do I have in this deck if I don't put any of these back in? I've got the Thriving Turtle. I've got the Seed Sculptor. There's 2 of them, so that's 3. We've got a Rishkar, which is kind of like 4 and 5, because Rishkar can put a counter onto 2 creatures. The Thriving Rhino is number 6. The Pima Outriders are 7 and 8. Feels pretty good. I'm going to put like 1 Armorcraft Judge back in at least. And maybe because I have to cut 6 cards, that would be it, right? We put 1 Judge back in, and then that's cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's the deck. That seems solid to me. This looks really nice, the way it looks here. Pretty big fan of the looks of this. Got enough really solid cards here that, like, not like really solid, but, or I guess not really good, but perfectly solid, perfectly reasonable cards that it's like there are good cards left in the sideboard. Not great cards or anything, but solid, fine inclusions. And it's going to be like that even if I swap these out for anything else. I'd be swapping out other cards that are perfectly reasonable. So, you know, something's going to get left on the sidelines no matter what. We are 16 lands, 1 attune with Aether here. Curve looks fine for a basically 17 land deck. 16 plus attune, as I was saying. Yeah. We've got 1 mana dork as well, the Servant of the Conduit. And that's another piece of fixing. You know what, I actually changed my mind a little bit here. I think we have some really good non-creature spells at randomly providing energy between Highspire Infusion, Attune with Aether, and Glimmer of Genius. So we have like enough supplemental energy to not really want just the energy stack that is Shipwreck Moray. So I'm going to try out double Armorcraft Judge here over that. Again, with the like 8 or 9 +1/+1 counters in the deck. I think that might be a little better. We will go with that for the final swap to the deck, but now we'll call it a deck here. All right, here we have a look at our final deck for Kaladesh Remastered this time around, and we're on a green-blue energy deck, splashing in a Quicksmith Rebel for a great bomb rare that can rip our opponent's field apart, dealing 2 damage to their creatures every single turn, or just shooting their face over and over again. So that's the excellent splash at the top end. Other than that, it's a pretty consistent green-blue energy kind of curve with a major +1/+1 counters theme as well. Cards like the Thriving Turtle and the Thriving Rhino hit our energy synergies and our +1/+1 counter synergies at the same time, whereas cards like the Kujar Seed Sculptor and the Rishkar can just get a bunch of counters onto the board. And then when we've got a few creatures on board with +1/+1 counters on them, we can draw quite a bit of cards off of some Armorcraft Judges potentially, so that can be pretty nice. We've also got some overlapping synergies, not just with energy and +1/+1 counters, but also with cards like these Pima Outriders that can either give us a +1/+1 counter if we have Armorcraft Judge in hand, or give us a servo token if we have Quicksmith Rebel in hand. So some really nice like cross synergy cards throughout this deck with the energy and +1/+1 counter cross synergies and the fabricate for +1/+1 and artifact cross synergies there. And we've also got tons of card advantage in this deck. We have 2-for-1s like 2 copies of Self-Assembler. We've got draw spells like Implement of Examination, Glimmer of Genius, and even potentially these Armorcraft Judges. And we have Trophy Mage as well, tutoring out some card draw. Just a lot of great ways to get ahead in card advantage. The biggest weakness that this deck potentially has is the lack of interaction. Green and blue do not have any particularly good removal spells. We could have picked up some bounce spells out of blue or some mediocre fight spells out of green, but instead we just have one pacification array for locking down our opponent's biggest threats, one Quicksmith Rebel for maybe clearing out some small creatures, and for the most part, we're just hoping that we can draw enough creatures, enough spells to overwhelm our opponent and get past whatever large things they're casting. So that'll be the biggest flaw of the deck, that lack of interaction there. If they drop some really good, like must be dealt with kind of bomb, we're not really going to have an answer for that, but hopefully in most matchups we can just overwhelm them by playing a lot more cards than them by the end of the game. So that's our game plan here. Without further ado, let's head into the gameplay and see how it does. Here we are on the draw for game 1. God, this hand is so gorgeous with a blue source, but it doesn't have a blue source, so it's such a risky keep. If we draw one island, I think it's pretty hard to lose with this kind of hand, but I think I have to mulligan here. We just can't guarantee that we're going to draw an island within the first couple turns. And we do really need to hit one within the first couple turns. So take that mulligan here. This is much better mana and still looks pretty good as a hand overall. So let's keep this one and ditch Skyskiff, weirdly. I mean, I could ditch a land, actually, because I have the Servant for a red source here, plus if I hit any land in the first 2 turns, it kind of feels like flooding out with this hand. Because Servant's another mana source, so we really just need to hit a 3rd land by turn 3, so we have 3 draw steps to draw 1 land, and if we do, then we're good. Because Servant then gets to cast and sack the Implement on turn 3. And if we don't hit the land here, we can just play the Skyskiff, block this Crane for a while. Okay, yeah, if we hit the land here, then boom, we're just perfect. We get to drop Implements, we get to draw the 2 cards, and I actually think I'd rather play Turtle than draw the 2 right now. But that was going to be the plan. Any 3rd land, just play Implement and draw the cards, and then those cards guarantee the 4th land, or at least make it more likely. But even if we don't hit it, we've got 4 mana off of 3 lands and a Servant, which is enough for everything in the hand. Alright, mono blue so far from our opponent. They are stuck on 2 mana. And with draws like these, we're definitely happy with the choice to... definitely happy with the choice to ditch a land in our mulligan. dropping down a 4/4 Pima Outrider so that we can attack into the 0/4. But our opponent is over. It doesn't really matter here. Our opponent keeps a monocolored 2-lander on the play and does not find any other lands. So they're just going to concede nice and early there for us. We are 1-0 heading into game 2. All right, here we are for game 2. Certainly looking to draw some more lands here, but we are on the draw again, which helps. We also have Aether Theorist to try to scry into some mana, if we need to do that. But we have hit our third land. Voltaic Brawler, very aggressive start from our opponent. That can attack as a 4/3 if they spend the energy. Yeah, 4/3 trample for only 2 mana. Oh, lord. Well, this is awkward, because I was going to say we could just Pacification Ray it to soak up some damage, but if we draw into Servant of the Conduit, I think we should just play the mana. Be able to spend 4 mana on stuff next turn. Alright, 4 damage it is. Down to 16. And there's a Thriving Rhino. That'll attack as a 3/4. Got a Blossoming Defense. So I can Seed Sculptor, hold up Blossoming Defense, block with a 4/5, kill one of these two. So I can make Seed Sculptor a 2/3 that blocks and kills Rhino by being a 4/5 and then trades into Brawler next turn. 2/3 into the 3/2. I think that's where we're at. It's gonna look a little suspicious not using Pacification Array, but hopefully it just looks like we don't want to spend the energy. Or we don't want to tap our Servant to the Conduit. The big issue here is using a combat trick during your opponent's turn is so much worse than using it during yours, because this gives them the opportunity with all of their mana up to cast like a Welding Sparks in response, if they have one. And it looks like they do not, thank goodness. If that didn't resolve for us, we would probably be too far behind to recover from here, but now we're still in this game. They're out of energy for the Brawler if they don't draw more energy production. So Sculptor for Brawler is a thing, but now they can just start crewing the Barge with it, so we need to be able to block a 5/5. Could block a 5/5 with a 3/3 and a 3/4 and only lose one of those two. Sure. I could also Pacification Array it. I think I put the counter on these two. Because that way I can double block the Bomat Bazaar Barge and still have Rishkar's ability on the board, making whichever one of these is left able to tap without spending any energy. Ew. That's very rude. Well, tap the Bazaar Barge then, before the Seed Sculptor dies. And if they attack with Brawler, I'm just going to trade Rishkar here. We're at 12. I can't just take more damage, I think. Plus, the Servant of the Conduit still produces mana as long as we've got energy, even if Rishkar dies. Okay. 3/3 and a 2/2. We will not have any excellent blocks for the Bazaar Barge. I think I'm just doing Pacification Array again. Okay. And if they didn't lock down my forest, this would have been a great turn to Glimmer of Genius, since we didn't have to Pacification Array the Bazaar Barge, since they didn't crew it. Oh, Beaumont Courier? Well, it's a good thing I'll be able to kill that like the second it attacks, but it'll still draw them one card once they're out of cards in hand. Just attack and sack it immediately. Okay, well, this doesn't matter, but I have no instance, so just tap the biggest creature. No instance I can afford, I should say. The only thing I can do while still holding up Pacification Array is play an Aether Theorist. So do that. Crew the Bizarre Barge. They go to combat. We tap the Bizarre Barge. Because I can't afford to block with Servant of the Conduit because we're not drawing lands this game. The choice of putting a counter on Conduit has ended up real awkward. So that we have just one mana dork left instead of two here. But I really wanted to present a great double block there. Let them kill the Conduit then and keep the Sculptor as a mana dork. That obviously did not pan out. That's disgusting. Narnum Cobra. Yeah, no, we needed more cards that impact the board this game. We're just drawing not enough mana to dump the hand out quickly and way too many draw spells over creatures. Oh, dang, I can't even... I've missed so many land drops, I don't even get to play a fifth land this turn. To pacification array anything. Yeah, I mean, we're just dead. One and one, heading into game 3. All right, here we are for game 3. Our opponent starts with an Attune with Aether, with their Godzilla lands. Okay, draw our Armorcraft Judge, but we don't have any of our +1/+1 counter cards yet, so we probably implement turn 4. Play and crack it. No! We really just would draw both of our 3 mana artifacts when we have Trophy Mage in hand, so this has no enter the battlefield effect. The Stone Cold actual worst draw in the deck. Playing against a Jund deck here. Natural 3-color. Well, not natural, they did Attune. I can Trophy Mage to play a 2/2. Or I can Armorcraft Judge without the card draw. Or I can just Pacification Array. Or draw 2. I think I draw 2 and take the 5 for now. Land, very cool. Two, 3 flyer from our opponent. We hit another land. Well, now I can play the Trophy Mage and at least tap the Outrider, I guess. That's so disappointing that we just top deck the second implement this game. Seed Sculptor. Probably buff the Foundry Hornet. Yep. It's pretty good. Well, there's one potential +1/+1 counter card, but we have to get an attack off with it. I think I need to hold up Array over playing the Implement. Plus, if I play the Implement, I don't have enough energy left for the +1/+1 counter on the Rhino. Maybe our opponent doesn't have like combat tricks in hand here, and just locking down the Hornet is enough to stop their attacks, where they don't want to send the Pima Outrider into a 2/3 and a 2/2. One can hope. But they've been stuck on 3 lands, so they have basically all spells there, which is really bad. Yeah, that is definitely tricks. I mean, what can you do here, really? Kind of have to just try to kill things and hope the tricks aren't great. Hope it's something like, Pyro Helix or something where we still kill at least one creature. Like any +2/+2/+3/+3 tricks, if I don't block, I just die anyway. I don't literally die, but I go to like 4 life or something, and then have no potential way back in this game. Speaking of having no potential way back in this game, they still not hit land 4? There they go. I was gonna say, I have some to spare if you want them. No, the best aggro creature. Put a counter on the entire board. God, that is super gross. It's pretty cute, but it's too late. These things are way too big to die to a Quicksmith Rebel. And get the red source, play it, put it on Array. Array can't shoot anything, and we die like 3 times over. Okay. Don't really think there was anything we could do these last couple games. Just some really nice aggressive curves from our opponent, and we're just not hitting enough defensive stuff, enough stuff that affects the board state a lot. And it's not because of the way our deck's built. Yeah, we've got a lot of card draw spells in here, but like we still have like a 17 creature deck. We've got plenty to affect the board. We've just had some rough draws for playing on the defensive. So it is what it is. 1 and 2 heading into game 4. Here we are for game 4 with a mono-colored hand again. Pretty awkward. We're also on the draw again, which has been very bad historically speaking. We keep running up against aggro on the draw today. But so far, so good. I mean, that Sky Skiff has lost its summoning sickness, so they play anything and start hitting us for 2 a turn. We've got no flying blockers here, we just have the Array for later. Okay, this isn't great. They are stuck on 2 mana though, so that's something. I'm gonna cast a Pima Outrider for a +1/+1 counter next turn, then I'm gonna cast an Armorcraft Judge the turn after that, so for this turn, I just hold up Pacification Array. I'm only stopping 2 damage by holding that up. But that's probably better than just getting the initial mana sink of the implement out of the way, because that's how we keep losing. Okay. Well, I want to actually win games of Magic. And I don't think either of our 2 games have been genuine wins. It's just opponent on 2 lands gets stuck on mana and concedes. We had the 2 island opponent, now the 2 plains opponent. Like, I'm definitely happy to not be 0-3ing today. But if we go like 2-3 or even 3-3, if our third victory is an opponent getting stuck on 2 swamps and conceding or something like that, it's still gonna feel like an 0-3, right? Like, these don't feel like games of Magic. Wanted to see how these would play out. But I think we just keep dying. Like, we have plenty of cards left each time and plenty of card draw left each time. We keep dying because we're getting out aggroed, so I think it's better to hold up the Array mana than drop the Examination here. So I was just going to soak up that mana for that, and then our curve is to go for the Outrider. Then we go for the Armorcraft Judge. We get a draw 2 anyway while actually affecting the board. So, yeah, I think it was interesting to see how it might play out there if we skip a turn just to stop a couple damage. But not a lot of Magic today, unfortunately. 2 and 2 heading into game 5. All right, okay. Game number 5 now. Here's our opening 6-card hand. we've got Servant of the Conduit for fixing the Trophy Mage with no Implements of Examination in hand, which means we should be able to get the value off that. Probably get rid of Blossoming Defense here, but maybe it is safe to ditch a land with this being mana for the Trophy Mage. At minimum, we can cast everything but Outrider. Sure. I'll ditch a land since we are on the draw again. Playing against red-white with Aether Chaser, an incredibly aggressive 2-drop. That's super hard to block. My life is flashing before my eyes and I don't like it. Salivating Gremlins. If they produce any energy, that's really gross with Aether Chaser. Because if they get 2 energy, they make another servo. This is trampling over as a 4/3 on attacks next turn. Am I playing an Outrider, or am I casting Trophy Mage and holding up defense here as a trick? I kind of want to hold up defense. Let's see what I can get done with it. Because with Aether Chaser wanting energy and Salivating Gremlins wanting mana, I was going to say they're incredibly likely to want to play something pre-combat. That's so awkward. So if I defense the Servant, I have no blocks up anyway. So they're still happy with this. That's still my best line, though. Right? Well, I mean, I can defense the Trophy Mage to have blocks up this turn, trade it into the Gremlins, stop some damage, and still play Peem Outrider next turn. Yeah, I feel like I have to be all in on stopping damage still. Yeah, so no attacks at all. A 4/4 does not really block any better than a 3/3, so let's get the servo. Because a 3/3 can already block a 2/1 first strike, a 3/3 can already block a 2/3, and a 4/4 will still die to a 4/3 Salivating Gremlins, just like a 3/3 would. So very big Gremlins, we are definitely trading a Peem Outrider into that. Like, I guess if I block on a turn where they didn't play any artifacts, we're not losing a creature here, but still. We don't know how many servos they can produce in the future. We know they can make at least one next turn and have it be a 4/3 trample, which is not good for me. Okay, this is a pretty good defensive board here. Got a 2/3 flyer, or the Eddy Trailhawk, or whatever it sends into the sky. I've got a 2/2 on the ground, I've got an 0/3 on the ground. We can get stable. Our deck has the card advantage. We've got 2 self-assemblers, got an implement. This looks like +2/+1 to everybody, where it's just impossible to stabilize. The card does exist in this format. If they have it, we're just like dead. I guess if they have that, if we do this, at least we still kill 2 of their creatures, and we're still stopping like just as much damage. Feel like I put the turtle under the Aether Chaser, so I stop 2 damage if they don't have it, and still stop the most damage if they do. Yeah. Yep, that was by... well, not by far. That was probably our second best block for if they had Inspired Charge, but putting the turtle under Chaser makes the block better for just in case they don't. And it's something like Chandra's Pyrohelix or something weird instead. But yeah, this way we still trade into 2 of their creatures and whittle things down. They're out of energy, so they can only poke us for 1 a turn in the sky. Unless they play more energy cards. We've got the ground blockers, a 4/4 for the 2/1 first strike, a 1/1 for one of the 1/1s. You? The classic ball lightning. Just a ton of damage right now. Yeah, that really speeds up the Yeti Trailhawk. Now we go to 3 life. We're dead to a ton of burn. I mean, I know I'm playing another 4/4 next turn, so I can do this to go to 6 instead of 3, and then just play another 4/4. It's better against burn. It's worse if they're just going to keep playing more creatures. Shuffle the deck. Whee! Classic. We played around the burn spells. They're just going to have a stack of creatures in hand, but if we didn't play around the burn spell, they would have just burned our face with Pyrohelix and killed us this turn. Poke us for 1 with Hawk and 2 with Pyrohelix. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. God dang it, Auto Tapper. I was not paying attention to Auto Tap the Aether Hub, so now I can't play Swooper and draw 2. We could have done both if we didn't let it Auto Tap. Oh. They just have multiple more creatures and the burn spell anyway, and we're so dead no matter what decisions we make this game. Because that's 3 games on the draw against very aggressive decks. And that's just how you lose some games of Magic. 2 and 3, it's gonna be. None of our victories really felt earned. It was just opponents getting mana screwed, so it kind of feels like an 0 and 3. Sad day of Magic. Not a lot of interactive games here. I mean, there were a lot of decisions to be made. We were thinking a lot while we were dying. We made a lot of decisions. I don't think any of them really ended up mattering in the end. Like, I think some of our decisions in some of those games were pretty smart and bought us a little bit more time, but then we still died anyway. But then some of our decisions were kind of loose and made us die a little bit quicker, but also we still would have died anyway. I mean, 2 of those 3 aggro decks, again, it was 3 just hyper-aggressive decks on the play against us, 2 of which stopped drawing non-land cards very early. Like, there was the Jund deck that was on 3 lands for a ton of turns, and that last round our opponent was still on 4 mana. On like turn 7 or 8 or something, still beating us down, hitting all action. Yeah. Just an endless onslaught from the aggro stuff on the play. I think this deck was pretty good. It's definitely a bit slow and low on interaction, 2 things that make it weak to aggro. So if we pair up against 3 aggro decks on the play, that can give us 3 losses pretty quickly. Overall, I think this deck's better on average than it managed to play out today. I think we just hit a couple rough matchups. Lost the coin flips to be on the draw a bit. That is how the cookie crumbles. That is the final draft of Kaladesh Remastered. Would have liked to end on a bit more of a high note, but our record overall in the format still remains quite high, thanks to those 3 7-win runs that we got, even with the last couple drafts being an 0-3 and a 2-3, still a very positive win rate overall. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.